Hey, this is Tom Schwab, and welcome back to the Podcast Interview Marketing Show, where we help you turn interviews into lasting impact, authority, and income. Now, today, I've got a guest who's not just been behind the scenes as a powerhouse for authors and entrepreneurs, but this is someone who's helped me personally bring my own book to life. I'm talking about Nick Pavlidis, and he joins us to talk about one of the most overlooked yet powerful strategies for building trust and authority. It's the podcast book tour. We talk about how trust is the ultimate currency in business and how consistency is what scales your influence. Now, Nick unpacks how he's used podcasting to grow his ghostwriting business, partner with publishers, and even become the CEO of Podfest. You'll discover how audio can build your intimacy with your audience and how to turn every interview into a launch pad for your book, your business, and your brand. Whether you're an author, a coach, a consultant, this episode is your roadmap to growing faster by leveraging conversations, not just content. Let's dive in. Nick, I'm so excited to have this conversation and share it with the world. This is the same conversation we have every time we talk and down at Podfest here, but it's all about trust. So what does that mean to you about building trust? I guess from there, let's start with that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me here. I love the show, and obviously you and I go way back, and I consider you a dear friend. And so I was honored, surprised that you would want me to join the show here, but certainly honored. And I've really built all of my businesses on that notion of trust. I've said it before. You've probably heard me say it 1,000 times that I have a one-sentence business plan in everything I do. And that's if I can help enough people become successful, I never have to worry about my own success. I borrowed that concept from Zig Ziglar. And really, that's the concept of building that trust with people in every part of doing business or in life. When someone knows that if Nick says something, it's going to happen, I don't have to go back and forth with people. I can have a 2-second conversation and they know, all right, I trust Nick. He's going to help me. For me, the concept of trust, even in the big picture or in one-on-one relationships, whatever it is, there's absolutely nothing that you can do to benefit your personal or business life more than to be a trustworthy person and be seen as someone people just want to go to because they know when they call Tom Schwab, they're going to be taken care of. He's got their interest at heart.
Man, that's like a one-word strategy almost.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to back up here a little bit without spending all time in memory lane. We met through Dan Miller's mastermind group there, and I will never forget, it was probably 11 years ago, where you looked at me at Jamie Slingerland's kitchen, and it's like, when are you going to get that book out of your brain and onto paper, right? And it's not going to help anybody. And all of a sudden I saw my wife, instead of standing next to me, she's standing next to you and her arms are crossed and she's nodding. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I threw out that date that, it'll be done. I'll get you the first draft by Christmas, because at that time you offered, I'll be your writing partner. I'll help you get this. And that was so tough for me to get to that point. I'll never forget that Christmas day, Christmas Eve, about 3:00 in the afternoon, is said, it's not my best work. I'm not proud of it, but here's the first draft. Merry Christmas. And, heck, within a couple of months later, the book was out there. And so, I publicly tell everybody, if you want to talk about having a book, right? Check out Nick Pavlidis, the authority ghostwriting. You want to get the podcast, go to Podfest, all of those things. So I think it's been really interesting how the things that we were doing a decade ago are even more powerful today.
Yeah. Well, if you bring it back to trust, so most people don't know me. I'm behind the scenes of basically everything I do. I'm sort of forced a little bit in front of the camera with Podfest. But I started out as a lawyer for 13 years and then as a side hustle built a co-writing, ghostwriting, book partnership business, Authority Ghostwriting. And in 2016, I left the practice of law for good to pursue my writing business. And my clients would come to me and they'd be writing the book, they'd be super excited about it, or just asking, trying to decide between me and another writer. And their questions would be, well, how do I publish this thing? How do I market this thing? And so I took it upon myself to build relationships where if someone worked with me, I could get them published easily. And I started building relationships with publishers. I built a really close relationship with Morgan James Publishing. And it got to the point where the types of books I wrote were the types of books they wanted to publish. And they essentially told me they'd publish anything I touched. And so that was from building trust that I delivered good books, quality authors to them. So it was trust with my clients and trust with my partners. And over the years, I gave them so many books and had so many happy authors that when they were looking for a strategic partner to take them to the next level, they approached me and said, "Hey, Nick, do you want some to join us as an investor, as a partner, basically let me write my own ticket, whatever I wanted." So I ended up having that business opportunity come to me because of that trust. And it was the same thing with Podfest. I was an attendee for years. I sponsored through various, I just gave them money to sponsor and put Authority Ghostwriting or Ghostwriter School, which is a course that I have for ghostwriters or for writers, just as a logo on their website, just to support them. And a few years ago, when Chris Kremitzos, the founder, was feeling like he needed some help, he called me. We worked out a deal in 10 minutes, and I ended up having that business opportunity. And so really, when you talk about this, trust is a currency, and it's probably the most valuable currency around. And the way trust returns on the investment is so much greater than you can imagine, because yes, you can measure it in dollars and cents, but you can also measure it. And I wouldn't be able to be living the life I have with the flexibility that I have if I didn't have people who literally, like, I was able to purchase businesses that weren't for sale because I built trust with people.
Yeah, there was a book, Stephen Covey's son wrote it. It's called The Speed of Trust, right? And one of the examples he used in there with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett sat down and figured out something while they were playing bridge on how Warren Buffett was going to give billions of dollars to the Gates Foundation. And it sounds like, wow, you got a deal done in 10 minutes, right? You got the deal done with Podfest, with Morgan James. But it was all that time beforehand and the conversations you've had, the trust you've built. And I can think of, your original podcast, Confessions of a Terrible Husband, Lessons Learned from the Lumpy Couch. I still swear to this day that has to be fiction, right? You say it's true story. But you were so authentic, transparent there. Just what you had learned in sharing that with people, that built up trust before even people knew you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so that for me, for the big picture, again, for those who don't know me, the point of Confessions of a Terrible Husband, the message is that you can do all the big things right. You can be faithful. You can provide, you can be gentle, but if you do enough of the little things wrong, your relationship's gonna suffer. And I did plenty of the little things wrong. I was lazy. I worked way too much. All of those things. And I tell in the book a story about how I came home from time away with Dan Miller at Coaching with Excellence in 2013, at an event he had at his property in Franklin, Tennessee at the time. And I was just motivated to be a better husband by watching Dan and his wife, Joanne, just engage with each other with love. And so I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to start. So I just silently decided to be a better husband. And so one of the first things I did was, when my wife was in the bedroom, I emptied the dishwasher without telling her. I put all the dishes away and I just sat back down on the couch and started watching TV. She came out 20 minutes later or so to empty the dishwasher because she didn't expect me to have done it. She opens the dishwasher, it's empty. And the look on her face, you would think, would be, wow, that was so nice. Thank you so much. No, the look on her face was, someone came in our house and all they did was steal our dishes. Like, what just happened here? The last thing on her mind was that Nick did it. And so, so those sort of moments, and the same thing, I reflect back now that we're talking about trust. If I had told her I'm going to empty the dishwasher, she wouldn't have believed me. She wouldn't have trusted me at the time. But just taking action and proving yourself, so to speak, one little thing at a time generates that positive momentum in any situation, business or personal.
Do you think it compounds on itself? So it's like that consistency of showing up in the same way.
Yeah, I tell people, I coach thought leaders on how to write books too, and in addition to helping them write the books and publish and market, and I also help a lot of writers who want to break into ghostwriting and book coaching and related services. And one of the messages I have for them is consistency beats velocity all day, every day. What you do consistently will lead to your results. And that's in every situation. If you consistently sit on the couch, you're going to consistently get in worse shape. If you consistently exercise and eat well, you're going to consistently get in better shape. If you consistently deliver on your deadlines, people are going to trust you that they're going to, that you're going to deliver. If you consistently miss deadlines, or if you're inconsistent, then it's going to count against you in whatever that context it is. So I'm a big person of consistently build trust, make small promises over and over and over again so you can consistently build that trust with easy wins instead of promising a big result and ending up only hitting a really, really good result. So it's sort of not just manage expectations, but set expectations and set those expectations in a way where you can over deliver. You're promising something, but you can over deliver. And those positive surprises will do so much more to benefit you than a whole bunch of promises that you don't hit, even if the results end up being the same.
So while you can do that locally, right? You're there in north of Boston.
Yeah.
How have you been able to do that and expand? Because there's times where I was just talking with somebody the other day and just referred to Nick, and they knew exactly who I meant, right? And so how do you think that consistency has gone from local to expanding out your orbit, and your influence?
Well, I've been doing it for a while now. So I started writing the first book that I've ever helped out with in December of 2015, right before you and I got to work together a little bit. So just a few weeks before. And I consistently listened a lot, and then tried to come through with something to provide for additional value over and over and over again. So for example, the first question I ask people when they want to hire me as a ghostwriter is not, tell me what your book's about. It's, I'm going to get into the book, but tell me a little bit, because I like to begin with the end in mind. The number one mistake authors make, it's not that they don't write a good book, it's that they write the wrong book. And if you write the wrong book, the worst thing that can happen is for it to be a runaway success, because it's going to attract the wrong attention. Like, look at you came out with your book in 2016 and it's still going strong for you because it's the right book. It's the right book for where you wanted to go. So don't write a book that just documents where you've been. Write a book that gets you where you want to go. And so what I do is I like to ask and listen to what's important to other people, and then constantly be able to put into context what I recommend or the relationships that I build for them and with them to what's important to them. And so I've spent the last 10 years really listening to the people who are in my world, and then working to either control or influence everything they need to become successful.
So you're an amazing writer, author, right? And I'm not just saying that because you had a big portion of my book, right? Do you think it's your trust has been built with your writing or your conversations? Because I can't say that I've read all the stuff you've written, but if you talk, I listen.
Oh, well, thank you. I think a lot of it is, and I don't want to say the writing is like I tell my clients, I don't charge for the writing. I charge for spending the time with you, helping you avoid these two big mistakes. Number one is writing the wrong book. Number two is sitting in a corner and writing your book for 6 months or 6 years on your own and putting it out in the world and no one cares. So how do we use the book writing process to generate momentum during the before your book even comes out? I have one author get over $600,000 before the book ever came out from his book. And so all of that stuff has nothing to do with the words themselves. Like when you have an author who books $100,000 worth of speaking engagements before the book comes out, it has nothing to do with the writing because the book's not out yet. And so I think the approach that I take is the writing is just the delivery method, is sort of the deliverable of what I do. And yes, I write well. And I say that because I enjoy telling stories in spoken and written form. But I think really the value that I provide and the reason people come back to me is because of the other stuff, because of the guidance, the conversations that we have. And a lot of people, I'll have an hour-long conversation with someone who's looking to hire me as a ghostwriter, and the first 45 minutes are just listening. And it's not me telling people how well I write. I can't tell you the last time I've sent a portfolio to somebody. People will see one of their friends celebrating their book on the USA Today bestsellers list, or celebrating this vacation that they paid for with their book funnel revenue or something to that effect. And they ask them, how did you do it? And they refer them to Nick. And so for me, there's a lot of people who hire me not even knowing if I can write well, which is pretty fascinating. And then after I work with people, I'm very happy, and this is sort of an area of pride from ghostwriting perspective. I've had more people hire me for multiple projects than people who have hired me for just one project.
It gets back to, you can sell a product, but people buy services, right? They're betting on the jockey, right? I'm not going to ask, well, what grade did you get in journalism in college, right? It's not an apples to apples there. Really, it's who do I trust to tell my story and get me to the outcome that I want.
Yeah, and for all of our businesses, and with Interview Valet, people don't want to be on podcasts. They want the result that being on podcasts with a strategy like that you provide, like one that you provide, can yield for them. They want to grow their business. They want to transition their thought leadership. They want to achieve some important personal goal. They want to get their message out there or their method to the masses. And they can do that. One way to do that is to be a guest on podcasts, and you can help them do that. And there's lots of ways to get on podcasts, but they come to you because you have the system, you have the experience, you have the relationships, and you can help them achieve that bigger goal. Because the getting on podcasts is your deliverable, just like the words are my deliverable. But that's just the pathway to the bigger, more important things. Why people hire you and why people hire me is because we understand and work to understand what their real big goals are and why. And then we have systems to help them achieve that. And we match our system to their goals. And that's how we get to execute and attract people coming back and referring us to their friends.
How do you think the podcast, the audio works with the book and building trust? Because I'll tell you, when I read, your book, I hear your voice. When I read Dan Miller's book, I still hear his voice, right? Even though, he graduated on a couple of years ago. But it's like, because I know his voice, when I read his words, it sounds like him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really powerful for those who have a podcast or who are guests on podcasts, when they refer people over to purchase their book, or if they record their own audiobook. It's a real powerful connector to turn the book from informational to relational. And when you can hear the author speaking to you, that's more of a virtual mentorship than just picking up a book at a bookstore and reading it from an author you've either never heard of or you've heard of, but they're so big and broad that you don't even think it's just information to you. So I think it's really, really powerful, especially I think you build deeper relationships with readers when you have the right book. It's an interesting book. It's a helpful book, but the reader is introduced through you either on video or audio, so they can build a relationship with you over the course of 15 to 45 minutes and then lead you to your book. That continues that conversation, and it's a different depth. Just like even without the book, being on a podcast builds a different depth because you have that. It's like you're having a conversation, and it's just that logical next step.
That's interesting. And your word was informational to transformational
to relational.
Yeah. And I could see that, right? It's one thing to ask ChatGPT and it gives me the text back. It's another thing for you to explain something to me, and the voice there. It's much more goes to your heart than just an academic answer.
Yeah, and the second layer to it is when the book is, I don't want to say properly written because there's no one way to write a book, but the way I write books and encourage people to write books so they're sticky and builds emotional connections with people, one of the elements to that is to lead with story. In your book, remember, we talked about several people in your world. They went on podcast guests to promote stickers and selling stickers. And so you tell this story and people can relate to the story. They relate to the subject of the story. And then you switch over into explaining, yeah, well, this wasn't just about selling tickets. The reason this worked is because he had this system in place on the back end. And so the people who were interested in that system would hop over, they would go to this website, and then they would be guided through nurture email sequences and more relationship building with the person. And so when you have that story in the book, it's much easier to hear the writer who you just met on a podcast. It's much easier to hear their voice reading it to you because it's story time. And then when you shift over to here's what's really happening, this isn't just Tom's story of how he went from half a manuscript to a published book with monthly recurring revenue coming in. It's much easier to transition to here's what was really going on. He had a system. He got some help. He did this. So you have these things. But if you just started out the book saying, here's 10 ways to get your book out, it's not interesting. And it feels like a textbook. So you don't hear that voice. So when you pair that audio and you pair that with this transitional way of writing, which is storytelling, and then into the informational, then you're able to keep that storytelling, keep that voice in your head, keep that relationship building sort of feeling with the reader.
Do you think that applies to when you're doing podcasts or even if you're doing a keynote, as opposed to focusing on the stories, as opposed to being up there that I'm teaching a lesson?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you notice, some of the most impactful TED Talks or some of the most impactful keynotes start out with the author saying, 3 years ago, I didn't think I would be here. And all of a sudden, whoa, tell me more. And you lean in. Or for those of you who don't know me, I work with this. And I have a student who blah, blah, blah. And you just sort of shift in, or you just go, 6 years ago, a student of mine came up to me and she was ready to whatever. And all of a sudden you draw it in. But if you just wanted to talk about whatever the subject matter is, you'd go in there and people will be in sort of learning mode. And what happens when you're in learning mode? You drift off. But when you paint a picture in a keynote, and I would spend 40 to 60% of your keynote telling a relatable story and then reflecting on it. All of a sudden, like that, the audience can better relate the information to their personal life. Like if I tell a story about a single mom who struggled with this and struggled with that, someone might not be a single mom, but they say, hey, I'm a busy dad. I work 50 hours a week. I have limited time. How does this apply to me? They get this emotional connection to the story and they start to relate it to themselves. So they get deeper. Like I've told stories about me as a lawyer, and a CPA will say, that's exactly like me. Or a financial advisor would say, that's exactly like me. But if I just say 3 ways to get more clients, they just space out.
And like you said at the end, and then tell them what it means to them,
Yeah.
right? So connecting after the story, you tell what the parable or the fable meant.
Yeah, absolutely. And they say, hey, this, and then they get to relate it to themselves. So people ask me, do I do a book that's hyper niched for one group? Yeah, you can do that. And that's super, super helpful. Even when you do that, you want to tell stories. So if you help financial advisors, for example, you would likely want to include a story about a financial advisor in a big city, a story about a financial advisor in a small town, a story about a financial advisor who's a solo shop, one who's part of a larger organization. And you tell those stories. If it's growing an advisory firm, you just tell one story about somewhat your top 5 or 10 ideal readers. And then you teach afterwards, and that gives you the opportunity to make a real emotional connection to say, wow, Tom really understands me, because one of these people is going to be just like the reader. It's going to be a big firm, small town, big town, corporate, independent, like those types of things. And so we did this with a book. I had an author who publicly says that we worked together. His name is Chris Tuff, mutual friend of ours, right? And he worked with you and got great results. when he published The Millennial Whisperer. And before he published the book, The Millennial Whisperer, he was an advertising executive managing 9 people. And he needed to write a book that got him advertising clients because he was a partner in the firm, and his partners would probably not be super happy with him if he spent time writing a book and otherwise could have been working to help the firm. And so we wrote a leadership book called The Millennial Whisperer, that we were strategically writing to get him known as a leadership consultant, but also in the meantime, attract clients to his advertising firm. And it worked. Nike ended up hiring him because of The Millennial Whisperer. And then a couple other companies did. And he came out of the gate. And now within 3 years of publishing his book, because that's what he said, I have a goal, 3 years. I want to be able to do my own thing. And so 3 years after publishing The Millennial Whisperer, he full-time flies around the country doing leadership consulting and everything. And he's just like living life now. Super, super happy. And he did great by his firm too. And nothing against his firm. He just had different dreams. And so, but I told him, I said, hey, you don't have this reputation. So we need to feature other people in your book. And we interviewed them and told their stories. But we did big companies, small companies, private companies, public companies. And wouldn't you know it, he put a story in there about a law firm, and a CPA firm called him and said, hey, yeah, I really resonated with that law firm story. We deal with that same thing. And so putting stories into not just your books, but your keynotes and even your podcast interviews helps the listener or the reader make this internal connection about how it could apply to them. And then when you reflect on why I'm telling you this story, that telling stories builds relationships and gets people to reach out to you because you're more accessible and you're more relatable and you're more helpful and you're more interesting, then people will likely reach out to you and you will grow. So yeah, absolutely. In the keynotes, everything, telling those stories and then telling them why that's important demonstrates a couple of things. It demonstrates that it applies to them. It builds relationships, but it also allows them then to connect the dots, not just with the story, but with the results that the other person got.
And if I remember right, didn't he franchise some of that? And there was like Millennial Whisperer for dentists.
He started to, and then he got excited about another book, another concept of building culture in organizations. And so he ended up pivoting he still does the Millennial Whisperer consulting, but then he wrote a book called Save Your Asks, ASKS, about how to network properly and build culture within an organization. So internal and external networking. And then he got an opportunity from someone who said, hey, I love what you're doing with this book. How could we do it? Because I have a passion for this. So he's actually built a podcast network called Pioneer Podcasting with a guy named Bert Weiss, who's another mutual friend of ours. And he wrote a great book about creating content. And so now he ended up doing doing a lot of different things, but sort of pivoting away from the franchise. That's not to say he doesn't still get people to ask him about Millennial Whisperer for this industry or that industry, but it just his time and efforts are a little limited because of all the other opportunities he's got. So Bert Weiss, that's another great book called Listenable, the content delivery system to set your podcast apart.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's the same sort of theme that you had there of building trust, and more opportunities come from there. Right. And if I ever get a tattoo, it's going to probably say one conversation away.
Yeah.
Right? Because this idea of, it's all one funnel away. No, it's all conversations.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about the funnels is you don't really like, and we were talking beforehand, I'd rather have 2 trusting relationships than 200 online traffic sources or anything like that. Because I can control, number one, the how I invest in relationships. There's no algorithm that's going to mess with me in a relationship. I have way more influence, and it's more enjoyable. I don't want to worry about, what's my click-through rate. Although I do all that stuff with authors, because book funnels and funnels off of podcast guests are super, guesting is super, it can be super profitable if you do it well. But for me, it's such a great life where you're sitting across a virtual microphone, a virtual room like we are here, just pouring into each other and helping each other out. And then sometime in the next week, you're going to come to mind with somebody, and I'm going to come to mind with somebody, and something special, not because we feel obligation to do it or intention to do it. It's just, you can not know if you're working. You can just stick around with your friends and hang out with your friends and help a lot of people and not have to worry about helping yourself.
How do you think AI has changed that, and technology, right? Because I always look back at the good old days were 10 years ago, but then today it's even better. So where do you see technology helping this, and I don't know, maybe helping it or hurting it?
I think it's helping it in many ways. The challenge are with the people who view what AI does as the full answer. And the way I look at AI is it does the stuff that I don't. I tell you, I don't charge for the words, right? So people want to write a book, the system that I have, the process that I do, the connections that I can make, and my track record of connecting people to solutions for what they care about is what I charge for. In terms of AI, it can certainly speed things up. Yeah, there's a little bit of a quality issue, or a lot of bit of a quality issue. There's a reliability issue still. Who knows how fast that'll develop and progress past it, where you don't have to worry about, is AI, making stuff up, and is it just not good? But what I like about AI is it allows us to say, hey, you're going to come to me. It's a filter for me. I used to, when I was building my ghostwriting business, I used to have Fiverr and other overseas websites, or websites where people will write an entire book for $2,000 or $5,000. And people would say, well, why would I pay you significantly more than that when I can go online? I said, well, because it's not about the words. Like, it's the words need to be good and they need to be yours and all that stuff. But the words aren't what's going to make you successful. The system's going to make you successful. The connections are going to make you successful. And so I can help guide you there. So I don't even charge for the words. I can coach you for the same price, and I'll even deduct whatever you pay someone on Fiverr to write it. It'll save me some time. But what I want to do is help you become successful. And so I think AI is very similar. So I always had this process to sort of, I'll say Fiverr, nothing wrong with Fiverr, but Fiverr proof my writing business, where I focused on delivering value that selling cheap words couldn't do. And so now the same thing, like I focus on delivering value that AI can't do. And so sometimes AI, we use it with clients to help accelerate some things, like, hey, we can put it through AI to identify any inconsistencies faster. That won't take us 2 weeks to get through a document, or even 4 days to get through a document. It'll take us 4 hours to put a chapter in and say, am I missing something? What am I missing? So I think it can be super helpful. And not, but I think that the impact of that will free up our time and energy to be able to focus on those real high value things, like building those relationships. Or, one thing that your listeners may be spinning a little bit when I say, oh, with Morgan James or with Podfest, I've built over the course of the last 10 years sort of a collection of 7 or so different business ventures that all help thought leaders, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants become successful using this thought leadership, or within this thought leadership bubble. Morgan James Publishing, Podfest, the podcasting conference, Authority Ghostwriting, Ghostwriter School, some software, SaaS, book funnel marketing type stuff, a marketing consulting firm, and then also a bookstore. And so if I can free up more time by utilizing AI in different ways, I can create more high impact offers for people, or I could just enjoy even more time with my family.
Or both.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, Nick, what's ordinary to you is amazing to others. I look forward to seeing you down in Podfest in January. Can you talk a little bit about this? And I'll tell you what, if you don't know Nick, you should. And if you come down to Podfest, I'll personally introduce him to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm the managing partner and CEO of Podfest. This is our 12th consecutive in-person conference. We were fortunate in 2020 to have our conference early in the year before everything shut down. So we have not missed a year of in-person events. So this will be our 12th. get a couple thousand podcasters today. And just like with my one sentence business plan overall, if I help enough people become successful, I never have to worry about my own success. We run Podfest with and through the principle and filter that if we help enough independent podcasters become successful, we never have to worry about our own success. And so our goal with every Podfest is to create a really cool vibe, which we've been successful with every year, but also to make sure that anyone who attends can be within four walls of all of the people, resources, and information they need to become successful, in this case in 2026. And so we have, I think it's 11 tracks. So their education is just top notch. We have speakers. We have over 100 speakers. We have monetization track. We have audience growth track. We have AI track. We have video track. We have a beginner track. We have technology track. We have a comedy track. We have some panels so we can hear from multiple people talking about their experiences in various topics. And we have Future Proof Author, which is another event that I put on. Future Proof Author is coming to Podfest to run its author track, sponsored by Morgan James Publishing. And so you can go there, you set your own schedule over the course from January 15th to the 18th, 2026 in sunny Orlando, Florida. So it's nice to get out of the winter for a little bit. It's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we have lots of cool networking opportunities, lots of good parties, great expo hall full of vendors who can help you in various capacity. This year, we're even getting the International Inventor Council to come, and we're going to be announcing it to the group. If you have an invention idea, you can pitch it to the Inventor Council, and they have a group of investors that ask them to keep track of what's going on for potential investing. So it's going to be super, super fun. We host the Podcasting Hall of Fame, and we have a very, very special guest coming to that this year to honor. We haven't announced the people who are being inducted this year just yet, but I do know one is our mutual mentor, Dan Miller. And so his family is going to be there. All of his children, his wife, and some other special people to honor him. And this year, Pat Flynn is our keynote speaker, and John Lee Dumas is emceeing the Hall of Fame ceremony.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that. If somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best place to go?
Just shoot me an email, probably nick@authorityghostwriting.com. That's the one that is the least busy email. So you can connect with me there about Podfest, about publishing, about ghostwriting, about bookstore fulfillment. So that way, if you sell books, we can drop ship it for you and have it count as a bookstore sale. So if you have a goal and it involves thought leadership, I love connecting with folks that way.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Wow. That was Nick Pavlidis, one of the most trusted voices in the world of building authority and trust. Now, if you didn't catch it, let me repeat one line that struck with me. Trust compounds through consistency. Now, whether you're launching a book, building a brand, launching a category, or growing your business, there's no hack for that. But there is a strategy. From ghostwriting to Podfest, Nick's story reminds us that the greatest deals often happen off the back of a meaningful conversation, not a pitch deck. If you're thinking about launching a book or scaling your message, don't just write it and hope. Hope is not a strategy. Pair it with a podcast book tour. Let your voice become your audience's trust trigger. So here's your next step. Reach out to a podcast host today, not to promote, but to serve. Share your story, your insights, and let the relationship grow. And if you want to accelerate that, well, join us at Podfest this January in Orlando. I'll be there, Nick will be there, and if you come, I'll personally introduce you. Because your next big opportunity, it's just one podcast interview away.